Tensions with Iran are rising, and Donald Trump is preparing to take us into another unjust war, but this time it's to get him reelected. Donald Trump tweeted out the following this morning: Iran made a very big mistake. This was in response to news agencies reporting that Iranian forces shot down a U.S. spy drone that was allegedly in Iranian airspace. Now, tensions with Iran have been rising since the Trump administration came into power. In fact, just 2 weeks after Donald Trump was inaugurated into office, his then National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn, made this announcement to Iran.
Instead of being thankful to the United States in these agreements, Iran is now feeling emboldened. As of today, we are officially putting Iran on notice.
Now, to understand what's going on, you must understand that there is a faction in the Republican Party called Neoconservatives who have been planning to go to war with Iran since before we went to war with Iraq. Hardliners like disgraced National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and current National Security Advisor John Bolton represent a faction of the Republican Party who have put their targets on Iran for more than a generation.
Iran marks the 40th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. So, Ayatollah Khamenei, for all your boasts, for all your threats, I don't think you'll have many more anniversaries to enjoy.
Donald Trump's ego was precisely what neoconservatives needed in order to get conflict with Iran. Donald Trump's primary goal after coming into office was to undermine President Obama's JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, better known as the Iranian nuclear deal. This deal, while not perfect and not satisfactory to anyone involved, was a give and take, just like any other negotiation. But the underpinnings of the deal was the belief that President Obama had that we would be able to assimilate Iran into the international community before they would be able to get access to nuclear weapons, giving them a vested interest to protect the international order instead of being a pariah and an outcast threatening the international order. The only other option, quite literally, was to go to war with Iran. And this is what hardliners in the Republican Party always wanted. It is all they wanted, no matter how many American lives it would cost and no matter how unjust the cause. And because of Donald Trump's ego, his number one goal has been to undermine and undo everything President Obama did. And so in May of 2018, President Trump withdrew the United States from the JCPOA and then began placing a new round of sanctions on Iran that further undermined the nuclear agreement. Journalist and author David Ferris wrote about this in theweek.com, saying, quote, Trump proceeded to capriciously sabotage the JCPOA, withdrawing from it in May 2018 before imposing new sanctions on Iran in November. This dreadful decision led directly to a series of completely predictable problems and the escalation of already acute tensions. Tehran said in May that it would no longer abide by the terms of the deal and has reportedly already begun new uranium enrichment that was announced earlier this week. The Trump administration has deliberately blown apart a well-functioning multilateral agreement with Tehran, reignited Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons, and ratcheted up military tensions in and around the Persian Gulf. So quite literally, any escalation in tensions with Iran is the direct result of Donald Trump's actions and his ego pulling us out of the JCPOA. This is another example of Donald Trump creating a problem and purporting to give us a solution. But this time, the solution is an armed conflict with Iran. And Donald Trump knows clearly that this is his ticket to re-election. And in fact, this is his ticket to ensure that he won't be impeached, because there is no way the Democratic Party is going to impeach a wartime president. This is what Donald Trump said in response to the possibility that President Obama would get into an armed conflict with Iran. Quote, I always said Barack Obama will attack Iran in some form prior to the election. Remember that I predicted a long time ago that President Obama will attack Iran because of his inability to negotiate properly, not skilled. Barack Obama will attack Iran in order to get reelected. Remember what I said previously, Obama will someday attack Iran in order to show how tough he is. Barack Obama will attack Iran in the not too distant future because it would help him win re-election. So it's clear that Donald Trump understands that his ticket to re-election in 2020 is based on his ability to get us into war with Iran. Neoconservatives in the Trump administration have done everything they possibly can to paint Iran as an irrational actor and an imminent threat. Last week, without any evidence, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo declared that an attack on a Japanese oil tanker was the result of Iranian aggression. Again, David Ferris, quote, the U.S. sent a carrier battle group to the Persian Gulf in response to unnamed Iranian threats, adding fuel to a fire that has since been further stoked by a string of alleged Iranian attacks on international shipping. And so the tensions that are escalating, that are seemingly taking us inevitably into war, are the direct result of the actions of Donald Trump, his ego, and the neoconservatives in his administration. And when we expose how Donald Trump is directly responsible for the escalating tensions that are leading to war, the only excuse that every Republican has is that Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. Indeed, the U.S. Department of State has labeled Iran as a state sponsor of terror. But ironically, the United States has a wonderful relationship with one of the leading state sponsors of terrorism, Saudi Arabia, the nation from which one of the most fundamentalist interpretations of Islam arise, Wahhabism. Saudi Arabia, who regularly engages in human rights violations. And that's the same Saudi Arabia from which 19 of the 21 hijackers on 9/11 came. Saudi Arabia remains a close ally with the United States, despite itself being a state sponsor of terrorism. And so here we are on the precipice of going to war with another nation when we have yet to conclude the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. In fact, we are now at the point where children who were born on 9/11, the reason for which we went to war with Iraq and Afghanistan, children born on 9/11 are old enough to serve in the military and are in fact serving in the military now. And the Trump administration wants to take us into another conflict for the purposes of satiating Donald Trump's ego as well as the bloodthirsty hawks of the neoconservative branch in his administration. And the irony of all of this is that while the United States labels Iran as the irrational actor, leaders from Iran are doing what they can to prevent war. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said that his nation will not go to war with anyone. He went on to say the following, quote, "Whenever the U.S. lifts the unjust sanctions and fulfill their commitment and return to the negotiations table, which they left themselves, the door is not closed. But our people judge you by your actions, not your words." U.S. foreign policy has been responsible throughout its history for creating the enemies that the next generation will face. Anyone complaining about the current Iranian regime must take into consideration that that regime came into power as a direct result of U.S. actions in Iran. 1953, the United States CIA joined with British MI6 to conduct a CIA operation called TP Ajax, in which the CIA overthrew the democratically elected Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh and strengthened the power of the American-friendly Iranian Shah. There is a direct line that politicians, scholars, and historians draw from that coup d'etat in 1953 to the Iranian Revolution of 1979, which installed the current Iranian regime for which the Trump administration wants to go to war. And so, in fact, the Trump administration is not only responsible for the current escalating tensions, the United States is responsible for creating the very enemy that Donald Trump wants to go to war with now. So when are we going to learn our lesson? How many lives have to be taken before we realize that America is its own worst enemy? We create the problems by intervening in the domestic politics of other nations. Then we respond by using the brute force of our military to crush them into submission. But every time the United States does this, we create more problems. So the question is, are we going to allow the sitting president's ego and his personal beef with Barack Obama, which is the reason he withdrew from the JCPOA in 2018, are we going to allow him to now take us into war to help his chances of winning in 2020 and to satiate the bloodthirsty war lust of the neoconservatives in this country? What we need you to do is to call your congressperson and call your senator and insist that no military action takes place without an AUMF, the authorization for use of military force. And what we also need is for Democrats running for president in 2020, we need them to take a firm stance against conflict with Iran and to declare to the nation that we will not go to war with Iran as a result of Donald Trump's ego.